Listen to me, and listen good. There comes a time in every woman's life when she has to stop begging for love and start commanding her worth. You gave your heart, your time, your loyalty. You showed up. And what did he do? He treated it like it was disposable, like you were just another option. Baby, you were the prize. And he didn't recognize it. You showed up every single day with nothing but love in your hands. You were honest, open, and willing to go to war for someone who wouldn't even lift a finger for you emotionally. You saw potential where there was only pattern. You believed in someone who didn't believe in themselves enough to treat you right. And still, you stayed. Still, you hoped that one day he would finally see what he had. That one day, the love you poured out so effortlessly would come back to you in the same form. But here's the truth. Some people only know how to take. Some people mistake kindness for weakness, and when they see a good woman, they treat her like a safety net instead of a blessing. You were the blessing. You were the calm in the chaos, the peace in his storm, but he couldn't recognize that. He couldn't see past his ego, his games, his selfishness. You kept giving chances, thinking maybe he just needed time. You convinced yourself that if you held on a little longer, if you loved a little harder, things would change. But all that did was drain you. You started shrinking just to keep the peace. You watered a garden that he never intended to grow. And what did he do? He left you guessing, left you waiting, left you hurting. He acted like your emotions were an inconvenience, like your presence was something he could take for granted and return to whenever it suited him. But that's not love, that's not partnership, that's not what you deserve. And you know what hurts the most? Not just that he failed to love you properly, but that you stayed through it all, hoping he'd finally rise to the occasion. That you dimmed your light, hoping he'd shine. Now the tables have turned. Now you're finally seeing it for what it was. And it's not your job to fix broken men. It's not your job to carry someone who keeps choosing to walk with empty hands. You were never too much. He was simply never enough. So now you walk, not because you're bitter, not because you're angry, but because you finally remembered who you are. You were the one who brought peace. You were the one who showed consistency. You were the one who showed consistency. You were the one who kept showing up even when he didn't deserve it. That's rare. That's powerful. And he'll realize it not today, not tomorrow, but when the silence gets too loud and your absence starts echoing through his life. When he's sitting alone and thinking back to the one who never gave up on him. That's when it will hit. That's when he'll feel it. The loss of a woman who was loyal, real, and irreplaceable. But by then, it'll be too late. Because once a woman truly sees her own value, she never looks back. Don't cry, don't scream, don't argue, don't chase, just fall silent and let your absence speak for you. There's something powerful about walking away quietly, about removing your energy from a place where it was never appreciated. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop trying to prove your worth to someone who never valued it, that's when the real shift happens. The silence becomes deafening. That space you used to fill with love, care, and consistency becomes painfully empty. He won't notice it at first. He'll think you're just taking a break, or that eventually you'll reach out like you always did. But this time, you don't. This time you go ghost. So when you finally do, when you stop answering the calls, stop reacting to the nonsense, stop fighting for someone who never fought for you, that's when he feels it. That's when the realization kicks in. It doesn't come with a bang, It comes with a slow, creeping ache that grows day by day. The late night thoughts, the photos he still has in his phone, the scent that lingers on an old hoodie. All those little reminders of you start hitting like punches to the gut because now you're no longer there to soften the blow. You're not there to comfort him while he continues to disrespect you. And it's not just your voice that's gone, it's your energy. That support you gave unconditionally. The way you made him feel like a king even when he didn't deserve the title. The way you had his back even when he was too blind to see you standing beside him. Now he has to face the mirror without you. Now once he reckons with what he did, now you have to face the mirror without you. Now he has to live with the void he created. See, when a real woman walks away, she takes the warmth with her. She takes the peace, the light, the grounding force. And no matter who he tries to replace you with, it won't feel the same. Because you can't replicate genuine energy. You can't duplicate a soul that was built for loving deeply and standing tall through storms. He'll scroll through old messages trying to feel something. He'll replay your voice notes trying to remember what it felt like to be understood. And that silence, because this time your silence became the loudest reminder that he had everything and he let it slip away. There's a point you reach where the pain no longer breaks you, it sharpens you. You stop looking at the love you gave as wasted and you start realizing it was a lesson. One of the hardest, most brutal lessons life can hand you is this. Not everyone deserves access to your heart, especially not someone who only knows how to take without ever giving. When someone treats your love like a convenience, it's not your job to convince them to see your value. That's not your burden. That's their blind spot. They had real, they had loyal, they had rare, but they were too busy chasing temporary highs to recognize the long-term blessings standing in front of them. You see, people like that only realize what they had when it's gone. When your number is no longer saved, when your name no longer lights up their phone, when the attention they got used to disappears. They start looking around and realizing no one else is giving them that energy. No one is showing up with the same loyalty, the same effort, the same fire. That's when regret kicks in. That's when their chest starts to tighten because now they're remembering how good they had it. But here's the thing, that realization doesn't heal you. It doesn't change the nights you cried. It doesn't fix the anxiety you carried every time he went silent for days. It doesn't erase the way you had to convince yourself you were enough when he made you feel invisible. He never thought you'd leave. He thought you'd always be there, waiting, forgiving, lowering yourself just to be loved halfway. But you finally stood up. You finally realized that you don't have to settle for someone who only loves you when it's convenient. You are not an option. You are not someone he can return to once the world disappoints him again. You're not a placeholder until he finds better, because there is no better. He had better. He had the woman who loved him through the chaos, who saw the good in him even when he couldn't see it in himself. He had the woman who forgave what others would have walked away from in the first month. He had stability. He had loyalty. He had consistency, and he ruined it. He's going to scroll through social media, see your glow up, and remember the woman who had his back when no one else did. He's going to hear a song, smell a scent, walk into a room, and feel you everywhere, but not have you anywhere. That's the punishment. That's what happens when someone loses a woman who would have gone to war for them just to be treated like she was nothing. That's when he'll understand what true loss really feels like. He thought he had time. He thought you would always be there. He thought no matter how careless he was with your heart, no matter how many times he disappeared and came back, no matter how many apologies he never gave, you'd keep choosing him. That's the lie he told himself over and over again. Because he never saw the storm building inside you. He never noticed the way your silence grew louder, the way your patience started to wear thin. He didn't recognize the shift in your tone, the tiredness in your eyes, the distance in your presence. He thought the strong woman who kept showing up, even when she was hurting, would never walk away. But what he didn't understand is that every time you forgave him, you were slowly letting go. Every time you picked up the pieces alone, you were learning how to live without him. This is so important that every time you own your own mistakes, then also making restoration. If you learn lessons from men alone, you will never go on some of. There's a moment that comes, not with yelling, not with tears, but with peace. The kind of peace that comes when you're done explaining, done hoping, done begging for basic decency. You just stop. You stop chasing closure. You stop justifying his behavior to yourself. You stop waiting for a justice. Or you just leave quietly, finally. And that's the moment he starts to feel it. That's when reality hits him. Not when you argued, not when you cried, but when you vanish from his life without a trace. That's when the panic sets in. Because now you're not reacting. Now you're not calling. Now you're not watching his stories, not liking his posts, not checking in. You're not doing anything, and that nothing is louder than any words you could have spoken, because he knows what he lost. Maybe not fully yet, but it's starting to dawn on him. The comfort, the security, the unconditional love you gave, he realizes it's not easy to come by. He starts remembering all the little things. The way you always checked on him when he was quiet. The way you believed in him when no one else did. The way your love felt like home. And he looks around and sees that no one else gives him that feeling. No one else comes close. That's when he realizes that losing you wasn't just a breakup, it was a complete loss of emotional safety, of someone who was real. But by then, you're already different. You're healing. You're growing. You're rediscovering yourself. The version of you who tolerated less than you deserved is gone. He doesn't get access to this version. He doesn't get to come back and enjoy the woman who learned to love herself more than she ever loved him. He doesn't get a second chance at something he took for granted. Because you gave him a heart that was full, and he returned it broken. You offered loyalty, and he returned confusion. You stood beside him, and he watched you stand alone. He thought your love would wait forever. He thought he could move how he wanted, say what he wanted, disappear when he suited him, and come back to you like nothing happened. He thought your heart was a revolving door. And every time he walked away, he was sure it would be wide open when he returned. He counted on your forgiveness like it was guaranteed. He saw your consistency as weakness instead of strength. He mistook your patience for permission and your loyalty for blindness. But what he never realized is that love like yours doesn't beg, and it doesn't stay where it's not respected. You were not holding on because you couldn't leave. You were holding on because you believed. You believed in the connection, the promise, the potential. You believed that if you just loved hard enough, it would be enough to make him see. But love doesn't work when it's one-sided, and eventually even the strongest hearts get tired. You started seeing the truth in his silence. You started hearing the answers in what he wasn't saying. Every time he ignored your feelings, every time he acted like your presence was a burden, something inside you shifted. You stopped needing his validation. You stopped explaining what should have been obvious. You stopped asking for what should have been given without question. And while he thought you were still holding on, what he didn't see was that you were slowly letting go. Letting go of the fantasy, the hope, the illusion. You started waking up to the reality of who he really was, not who you were wishing he'd become. That's when everything changed. You didn't make an announcement. You didn't scream or slam the door. You just detached. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You pulled your energy back. Why your messages stopped, why your tone is different, why you no longer seem affected by his absence. That confusion he feels, that ache in his chest, that's what it feels like to lose a real one. That's what it feels like when the person who always had your back finally turns around and chooses themselves instead. And no matter how much he tries to fill the void, it won't work. Because the kind of love you gave isn't easy to replace. It came from a genuine place, a deep place, the kind of place most people never even reach within themselves. That kind of love is rare, and once it's gone, it leaves a silence so loud it echoes. It haunts him during the quiet nights. It whispers to him in the middle of his laughter. It sneaks into his thoughts when he sees another woman trying to give him what you gave effortlessly. But it won't be the same, because the one who truly cared is no longer within reach. And that's a reality he'll have to live with every single day. You were never asking for too much. All you wanted was effort, presence, honesty, basic things that don't cost a thing, but mean everything. You weren't trying to control him. You just needed consistency. You weren't trying to smother him. You just wanted to feel prioritized. But somehow he made you feel like your standards were unreasonable, like your emotions were too intense, like your needs were some kind of burden. So you started second guessing yourself. You started shrinking. You started silencing your voice just to keep the peace. You became so focused on not losing him that somewhere along the way, you lost yourself. That's the trap. Loving someone who makes you feel like you're hard to love. But the truth is, you weren't too much. He was too little. Too little effort, too little emotional maturity, too little respect for what you brought to the table. You gave him loyalty in its purest form, the kind that stays up late just to make sure he's okay, the kind that checks in, encourages, supports, and believes even when you weren't receiving the same energy back. You were his safe space. the place he could fall apart without judgment. And instead of protecting that space, he abused it. He kept you on a string, just close enough to keep you hopeful, but never close enough to feel secure. And every time you threatened to leave, he gave you just enough to make you stay. A sweet word, a half apology, a temporary change in behavior. And you clung to those crumbs like they were promises. But deep down, you knew. Showing up for someone shouldn't feel like sacrificing your own peace. You knew you deserved more, even if you weren't ready to admit it yet. But something in you woke up. Maybe it was one too many ignored texts, one too many nights spent crying in silence, one too many moments where you felt alone in a relationship you were pouring your whole soul into. Whatever it was, it sparked a shift. You stopped romanticizing potential. You stopped settling for temporary affection. You stopped accepting apologies without change. And slowly, you started remembering who you were before him. The version of you that didn't wait around for validation. The version that didn't question her worth. The version that knew exactly what she deserved and wouldn't settle for anything less. He's going to notice the change. He's going to feel the distance. He's going to sense that he no longer has access to you the way he once did. He'll try to test the waters, see if the door is still open, but this time, you won't answer with softness. You won't rush to explain or comfort him, because now you understand that real love doesn't require you to lose yourself. And now that you've tasted your own power, you're not going back to pretending that breadcrumbs are enough to keep you full. You were never the problem. You were the blessing he didn't know how to handle. You gave love, loyalty, and effort to someone who thought you'd never leave. But silence became your power, and distance became your peace. He expected you to wait, to keep accepting less than you deserved, but you woke up, you stopped begging, you stopped breaking for someone who wouldn't even bend. Now he's left with the consequences of his choices. He'll feel the absence of your presence in ways he never imagined. That loss, that silence, that's the echo of a woman who gave everything and finally walked away with dignity. Let him sit in the emptiness he created. While he's searching for what he lost, you'll be busy becoming everything he couldn't appreciate. Don't text, don't call, don't explain, just keep glowing. Let him feel the loss. You don't have to prove your worth. Your absence already did.